is education. And the other side of the coin would be, what is your philosophy of learning? And I think the focus on learning sometimes takes us into different places than the focus on teaching. So not so much what we want to do as teachers, but what can we do to help our students learn? So learning occurs across multiple contexts and through social and content interactions, kind of meaning learning can occur anywhere. And how do people learn? So there are 4 kind of main theories about learning, and I'm just going to run through them really quick. First one is behaviorism, and that was like the predominant learning theory for most of the 20th century. We think of behaviorism as the carrot and the stick, motivation, intrinsic, extrinsic, but it's also just like visible behavior. What we see is what we get. So behaviorism doesn't really take into account what's happening in the human brain. It's only taking into account what we see that the students do or perform. And I remember when I was in graduate school, one of my professors talked about this story when he was in a park and he heard 2 little kids get into a fight. And one kid said, "It's not the guy that gets called a chicken that's a chicken. It's the guy that calls the other guy a chicken that's really a chicken." And for my professor, he was just fascinated by this language usage, that this little kid made this extremely complex construction that is grammatically correct. And there's no way it could have been modeled on a similar sentence. This came from his own brain, his own processing of human language. So this brings in cognitivism, and where behaviorism was not at all concerned with what happens in the brain, cognitivism is all about what's in the brain. So, the categorization of information, storage, retrieval, connections, analysis, making things fit together in the puzzle that you keep in your brain. Cognitive constructivism is the building of knowledge, based on what you already have. So this can be kind of, trial and error, exploratory, what happens if I do this? Kind of experimenting with the world and asking questions and trial and error and, building knowledge and developing understanding in your brain. So let's have a quick math interlude. True or false? 2 is greater than 3. Is this a true statement? I think most of you would probably say yes, but that's not always the case. Sometimes 2 is greater than 3. Maybe I misread that last slide, but 2 bars of gold would be greater than 3 bars of silver. If I'm going to have one or the other, I think I would prefer the 2 bars of gold. And why do I know that? Because in our society, we've said that gold has more value than silver. So it's not a matter of number. It's not knowledge that I could develop on my own. It's only knowledge that can be developed through interaction with society, that society has made these rules or this bit of information important. So, socially constructed knowledge are kind of the rules on how society works. Money, something like that, a little kid, would you rather have, 4 of these silver coins or 1 of these gold coins? A little kid would probably say, oh, 4 is greater than 1, so I'll take the 4. But an adult would realize, oh, wait, gold is going to be much more valuable than these smaller coins, so I'd rather have the 1 coin. And that's not the kind of knowledge you can develop on your own. It's only knowledge you can develop through interaction with society and with other people. So, as a teacher or instruction, behaviorism, there are the yes/no answers. This is true or false. Is it A, B, C, or D? There is a right answer and a wrong answer. And when you're teaching, if you're giving the students all the information they need, here are the answers you will need on a later test. That's kind of a behavioristic model because you only care about what they do with that information and give it back to you later. And the cog on the left is just like the cog performing a certain function. We don't care why it works, but we know it works properly. Where cognitivism is going to be teaching like theory and why, explaining why something happens. And as students develop this information, they can apply it and evaluate it and synthesize it and connect it to other bits of information they have. So, cognitivist teaching, I might explain why something happens or how something happens, and then give students different problems to take this theory and apply it to these new set of circumstances. Cognitive constructivism, building on previous knowledge, and I kind of view this as more, not as a teacher, not giving the students the reasons, but posing the questions. Why do you think this happens? Considering what you know about A, how do you think that applies to B? And now the students kind of have to process and make their own answers, their own reasons to make this new information fit. So, here the picture I chose is just kind of tinkering with the watch. That, how does it work? Let me take it apart and figure out how it works. I'm not looking at a manual to see how it works. So again, this one, maybe as the teacher, you're telling them how. And this one, the student, okay, here's a watch, take it apart, put it back together, and tell me how it works, would be constructivism. And finally, social constructivism, people working together to do things beyond what they can do by themselves. Here with the watch example, someone needs to make the cogs, need to make the band, need to put it together, need to understand all that control. And that might be beyond one person's capability, but a group together can do that. And this is not a new idea. Isaac Newton, I think, said something along the lines of, if I've seen further, it's only by standing on the shoulders of giants. And, we see that in the way that society keeps moving forward. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every generation. We build on what's already known. So how can we learn X? Different learning for different knowledge. Here, chopsticks, the usage in Japan is pretty much decided, but maybe in a Western country, somebody's using chopsticks as hair adornment. It wouldn't be something that they would know. It would be something that they create. Or, riding a bicycle, speaking a language, doing something physical. I can tell you how to do all these things, but you won't be able to do it unless you practice physically and get that kind of immediate feedback of, am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? Versus, if anyone recognizes the golden record here, which was something NASA sent out in the Voyager project. And it contains this message on how to decode the record to access it. And it's in the language of science, because this kind of knowledge should be across the board the same for everyone. Where chopsticks are a couple of sticks to one person, they're an eating implement to another. Science is going to be the same no matter who figures it out and how they figure it out. So it takes a community. This year, I was in charge of doing faculty development for the Department of International Liberal Arts, which is my department at my university. And one of the things about teaching, or especially teaching in Japan, is this idea of schema, these mental representations of known constructs. And I wonder if anybody can identify what this is here. Anybody? You can turn on your mic and speak. A dog? Okay, Catherine. A poodle, thank you. This is a dog, but how do you know it's a dog? What about this is telling you that it's a dog? There is some sense of dogginess about it. And if your schema of dogs is broad enough, you get this idea. So what is your schema of teaching? Maybe not something we think about, or a lot of us think about in a metacognitive way. We just kind of have our way of doing something, and that's how we do it. So to what extent is there a right way or a wrong way to do something? The schema with the idea of the culturally constructed knowledge. So if the role of chopsticks is to get food from the plate to my mouth, and I successfully do that, how can there be a wrong way for me to use chopsticks? There's some social rule about that. And especially in Japan, where kata is such a big part of society, with nomikata, tabekata, hanashikata, sawarikata, I wonder about concepts of oshiekata, benkyou shikata, jugyo no yarikata, and these kinds of things, that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. So, where does teaching knowledge come from? Here in JALT, I think probably more than most have some kind of teaching or education background. But in universities, higher education, teachers are mainly like content specialists, and they don't necessarily have any training about pedagogy and teaching. Schulman, 1986, talked about the difference between knowing a subject and knowing how to best teach a subject. This idea of pedagogical content knowledge as two separate constructs. So I did a survey of the faculty in my university, and of the respondents here, N85, what is your greatest influence on your teaching practice? 45% say the teaching styles of former teachers. And if you think of most of the classes you've participated in or seen, usually those classes are teacher-centered. The teacher is giving a lecture and giving the information for students in the class. How do you know a different way? Well, you don't know what you don't know. And here I gave a little survey, which maybe some of you were able to do during, just as I started this. I feel confident that I have the necessary skills to use technology for instruction. People who are strongly agree or disagree, that has to depend on what they know about technology and what they can do with technology. And I'm just going to see, I do have 3 responses on the survey, and I can use these pens to their full potential. Well, one person said agree, one person was neutral, and one person was strongly agree. So we have an equal pie here, 33.3%. Now, I had these pens for more than a year, and I thought I knew everything I knew about using a pen until one day I saw somebody with the same pen using an eraser on the pen. And I thought this was just to touch a smart screen or something like that. Because when I grew up, we learned how to write in elementary school. Pencils were for making mistakes. We didn't get to touch a pen until we knew our ABCs, and our teachers were confident that we weren't going to make mistakes. So pens were permanent, pencils were erasable. And I think, something as simple as a pen, that for a year, I didn't know 50% of these pens' capability. I was only using the writing part with no idea I could erase it. And I didn't know what I didn't know. It didn't even occur to me that this might be an eraser. So apply that to teaching and pedagogy and what you do in the class. How is learning different in the 21st century? Most of the teachers in my school are older, like more than 40, and they've been teaching a while. So teaching today is kind of different than it used to be. And one of the big differences now is knowledge is freely accessible. Before you had to seek out your teacher and find someone who could share the information with you. But now that is no longer necessary. So as educators, what is our goal? Our goal is to teach students how to use knowledge and what they can do with knowledge. And the big addition to our century is information and communications technology. So anytime, anywhere learning. Anybody with a device and access to the internet can access pretty much any kind of information that they are seeking. And this is, completely new. It kind of our ideas of what do students need to know in class depending on our topic. And my department is not an English department, it's a liberal arts department, and people have many different specialties. So thinking of what's the goal of what you're trying to teach your students. Is it something they can find through a simple search? Or is it something different than that? Is it some way to apply the knowledge? And here I just have some sample Google, almost searches, design and build or understanding basic. And, I'm sure all of this stuff in this understanding basic electronics would probably be the first week or two of a basic electronics course. So what do I need a teacher for? Or what do I need a class for? Learner autonomy is something I've heard talked about in some of the other presentations today. So teaching is no longer about the transmission of knowledge. In the previous century, kind of industrial education, we needed to produce professionals who could fulfill certain functions within companies. And basically those were the same functions no matter where the office was. But now things are a bit different. So changing times, but our teachers changing, our classes changing. One study that looked at higher education in Japan found that the introduction of technology and all these new capabilities didn't make any meaningful difference. It was still teacher-centered teaching in a different format, which meant instead of overheads, people were using PowerPoints. Instead of using a typewriter, people are using Microsoft Word. Instead of paper handing in, submitting by email or something like that, but not a meaningful difference. So 21st century, what is important that we teach our students? It's communication skills, collaboration skills, critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, information literacy, things like that, that students can be guided at and prompted to do. And with teaching today, I think we need a different conception of what teaching involves. This Tpack Framework by Kohler and Mishra is a nice Venn diagram of kind of like intersecting competencies for teachers that maybe they don't think about so much. So, what do I know about my content? What do I know about teaching? What do I know about teaching my content? What do I know about technology? And then how do I mix all that together to deliver lessons that are going to help my students learn, create projects or tasks that are going to be beneficial to the students' learning. So, effective use is not just, using technology, but creating lessons and activities that allow students to develop, cognitive skills and problem-solving skills and the ability to, evaluate, analyze, and things like that. So, thank you. In the faculty development program for this year, 2021, I kind of had this overview. Foster a teaching community. In the past, faculty development has mainly been like 1 or 2 how-to meetings a semester. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. And very teacher-centered kind of program. This was a hybrid program of synchronous and asynchronous components. I put it on an LMS. And I gave opportunities for incidental learning, which is not pointed out, but incidental, like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And just trying to provide examples that people could pick up on. And this was conducted over 7 sessions for this semester. So session number 1 was kind of metacognitive, what do you think about teaching? How do you present your material? How do you think that material helps students learn? And with 18 active members, there were 59 discussion entries. It's like, wow, this is really good over the course of a month, that there was a lot of interaction, and perhaps teachers were thinking about teaching differently. And they were definitely communicating more than they have in previous iterations of faculty development. Session 2, I introduced Bloom's taxonomy, which is different levels of knowing. with the lowest level being, remembering, and then moving on up to creation. And I also provided a list of action or active verbs. These are the kinds of skills that display these different levels of knowledge. So in this particular asynchronous session was, tell us about some of your assignments and show us some of your tasks that utilize these different active verbs. And the point was to get teachers of different specialties sharing their ideas and their practices, which would hopefully spur ideas and conversation with teachers of other specialties. And here, the buy-in was a little bit lower with 37 entries over this one. Session 3 was about schema, and I kind of wanted teachers to think about what do they think their, oshiekata is. How do you conduct a class? And I also showed this survey that was in a previous FD session that we had at the university that showed what companies are looking for in students. And very little has to do with academic achievement or language skills. Most of what they're looking for is, communicative ability, responsibility, problem-solving skills. And these are not really related to any specific subject matter. They're just related to how students can perform. In fact, subject matter, again, was very, very low, 4.4%. Session 4 was the start of the fall semester. So, what are you going to try to do new this semester? And again, trying to push the assumption that you will try something new instead of just rehash old material. And the last item here was, what do you want help with, or what do you want to do better? And hopefully to get some conversation going on problems or issues that teachers want to solve. The 5th session was a synchronous group discussion, share ideas related to the classes they were teaching. And here, kind of the point is teachers' perceptions of what happens in the classroom are related to their relative pedagogical knowledge. So if you don't really understand what active learning is, having students do multiple choice options together seems like active learning pair work, but it's not really meaningful pair work. So the idea that different backgrounds would help them with different aspects of teaching. And 6 was on academic ability, that they often complain about gakuryoku is hikui, it's low in this school. So what can we do about that? And this was a disappointing, only 10 entries. And in the synchronous session, in several breakout rooms, the conversation just died immediately. Like no one really wanted to talk about this. So, the final session was a reflection on your fall goals. So we reviewed what they wrote in October, and then how did that work out this semester? And opportunity for reflection and to hear about other teachers' experiences. So my reflection was there was much more engagement this year than in previous years, and it lasted over a longer period of time. It was the first of this kind of experience of FD for most faculty. And while some teachers didn't really participate, others talked to me and said, oh, I'm really disappointed that no one's commented on my entry yet. So there was some buy-in on some part. And it was also an attempt to desire the kind of active learning we want from our students. And it was disappointing that the faculty were displaying the same kind of traits as their students. So difficulties to overcome, everyone's busy, confidence levels of sharing, a lack of awareness of, different possibilities, attitudes of risk, and, unwillingness to change. Like once I was told, I teach my way, you teach yours, and that's fine. And I rushed through that last bit, but I think I'm right at 25 minutes. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I thank you all for joining me on this Sunday afternoon, and I'm happy to take any questions now.
We have about 3.5 minutes left for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand in the using the reactions hand raising. And Namiko? Sorry, not Namiko. No hands raised. Sorry.
Nobody?
Yes, then. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kasumi. Oh, okay, no, because I just wanted to say, like I was about to ask you if there was any pushbacks from the faculty, but you told, yeah, you answered that kind of question. And like, so yeah, like, because I could see very easily, like some teachers are not really willing to try new things. And so, yeah, I really appreciate you doing this faculty development for your faculties and like sharing your observations with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. One thing I did make some of the submissions graded assignments just to try to push some teachers. So, oh, you're getting a 0 next time. You better try to get a 10. But you know, that was just, you know, just my fun in this particular task.
Yeah, just I don't know if this is a comment or a question, but I think one of the advantages that a lot of us have is that we're studying a foreign language as we're teaching a foreign language. And for me, the first question was, well, how do you teach? For me, I try to give students opportunities for how I've studied and tried to learn Japanese. So what works well in my study are things I try to do in my class is kind of the main thing. And the other thing I try to follow is that if when I give students assignments, I do them myself. And you know, if it's really tedious and unpleasant, well, then I know I shouldn't be asking my students to do it. And if I can enjoy doing it and find it beneficial for myself, well, then maybe it is worthwhile doing. But in your FD, Ross, do you not? I know it's not just a language department, but aren't the teachers learning things? So like asking, how do you learn the foreign language or whatever their field is? How did you learn it? How are you teaching it? So
I mean, part of my, not problem, challenge was how to make this faculty development relevant to teachers of different specialties.
Right. Yeah.
And so trying to keep it general, and I tried to stay away from talks of language stuff, although I did, you know, some of my examples in the posts were, you know, language related tasks I did. But I really think, you know, awareness, like the pen example, you know, it's a true story. And I'm just hoping that teachers hear, wow, you know, I didn't know I could do that, or that's a really good idea. I wonder if I could try it with my classes. So try to just promote this discussion of what improving on the practice of teaching and pedagogy without singling out a specific specialization, that I find that conversation is just lacking. It's always administrative talk.
And yeah, your very last point is kind of the saddest point of all, that if there's teachers that don't want to learn and then they want their students to learn, that's kind of the saddest thing of all.
And I've seen that a lot. So just trying to overcome that. And so I was pleasantly surprised, like one older Japanese teacher came up to me in the hallway one day and he's like, you know, I'm really disappointed that no one has commented on my post. And I was like, oh, really happy that he had posted, and I had read it earlier that morning. So I was able to ask him some questions about it. But that I think a lot of the teachers just think it's a chore, and they're busy with all sorts of stuff. So trying to make them recognize that this kind of formal discussions can be really important and helpful, not just putting out, but you're getting a lot back from it. It's the hard message for some people to realize.
Especially since, that's what you want your students to do, and you won't do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross, for a wonderful presentation. We are over time, and so therefore I think we need to close this session. But if you could unmute your microphones and let's give Ross a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions and for joining me this afternoon.
I'm going to have to head out to my next job, which is room 2.
Okay, thank you, David.
Okay, I thought you were going to go to the other room.
I'll be here for most of it.
Okay. Well, you guys have had an amazing set up today. I wish I could have seen a lot more of it, and I'm glad you recorded some.
Hello, Barb. I am
Hey,
David, and I am your host for today.
well, I'm so lucky. I'm glad to see you.
I chose your presentation to be to host.
Oh,
He
You
shoved
have
me out of the way.
PowerPoint,
yeah, I got it up. Can you see it okay?
and the next question is, do you have any sound or video on it?
I do, but I also tested in the other room, and it looks like I can go to YouTube and the Google Slide easily enough. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Famous last words.
Oh,
And-
okay. Want me to go test it out? I actually, because I tried sharing originally, and the box for optimizing video clips seems to be grayed out.
Sometimes it is that way. So if
Yeah.
you just find that it's your the sound, you're okay. If you
Okay, when I did it in the main room just to test it, it worked okay.
Okay, good. And then also, we will be recording them. I imagine that's not a problem, but if there's any copyrightable things that you as an author know that you
Oh, no. I can only use stuff that I've paid for.
thing is, do you want a you have 25 minutes presentation and 5-minute Q&A. Do you want me to give you a 5-minute warning after 20 minutes? Say
Sure.
that you have 5 minutes left from your presentation.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Thanks.
Questions. Do you want the questions to be done online on chat, or do you want them orally face to or
How about whatever people feel comfortable with? Either one is fine with me.
okay, then we'll have them raise their hand in reactions and
I
so we-
yield to my knowledgeable room host.
okay, I think we're ready to go in 53 seconds. So
Okay. I feel lucky to have you on my side, David.
who's recording?
Somebody is, it's already flashing.
Yeah, I'm close.